Let me bring you over to my Bloomberg terminal. Now, if you type EU TV Go, this is not polls, but it's actually the odds of one of the three top candidates getting in. Emmanuel Macron, 37.7. You can see it waning a little bit. You have Marine Le Pen at 34. She's gaining. And then you have that crash from François Fillon because of the alleged scandal with the sons and the wife, and now at 28.8. It seems that markets are discounting Marine Le Pen becoming president. Are they wrong, Richard?
Somewhat. Look, she's clearly going to get into the second round. And she is going from someone who had negligible chance to, look, she's now going to be one of the two finalists. So I don't know if you say her odds are 4 out of 10 or 5 out of 10, but they're in that range. Two things. One, we'll have to see whether people rally around Macron if he is indeed the quote-unquote establishment alternative. And second of all, like in this country, like with Brexit, we've got to look at issues like turnout and how people respond. But I think her odds are at least 4 out of 10, Christine, and I'd say maybe getting close to 5.
Are there similarities between Marine Le Pen and what led to Brexit? I know Tom wants to talk GDP, but actually I would point to immigration and fears over immigration in Europe.
Well, at the risk of saying you're both right, you're both right. Obviously, immigration issues, the lack of integration of immigrants in France is an issue, the constant security concern you have there. And then, yeah, I mean, the behavior or performance of the French economy for not just years, but decades now. And you add the two together, that's the kind of fertile soil where you get populism and nationalism. So it's just so predictable that a candidate like Le Pen is doing well. Plus, she's toned it down. She is incredibly sophisticated. We did an interview with her in our magazine, Foreign Affairs. It was so subtle. She really has learned how to navigate in ways that her father never did.
You know, you just did a great brief for Jonathan Masters at CFR. I can't say enough, folks, about the quick briefers and backgrounders at Haass's CFR site. Let me bring up here nominal GDP. This is the animal spirit of the United States versus France. Richard, you know this well. Here's the lassitude of France through the 90s into 2000, and they do it again after the financial crisis. Do you sense, and do your analysts on France, do they see any structural change out of this election, or is it business as usual? Is there a why here that leads to structural change?
And after the election time? I mean,
after.
This is not an election that's going to be fought, I think, unless I'm missing something on competing views of economic reform. I think it's going to be much more gut and visceral. Afterwards, you're going to have the same forces in France pushing back.
I don't know if you know the answer to this, but help me here. There's an anger, a seething angst that led to the Trump victory and the support of Bernie Sanders. Do you detect the same anger and seething tone within France? I don't see it yet.
Not quite, but there's elements of it. Again, the fact that Le Pen is doing so well tells you something. I think there is a frustration with politicians as usual. There's precious little support for the EU. Right. I think the fact that Trump did as well as he did here and Brexit did as well as it did in Britain has in a funny sort of way imparted momentum. The idea that she was inconceivable, well, no. Now she's conceivable. It's changed the way people look at Le Pen.
Why does Donald Trump actually support Marine Le Pen? I mean, he's alluded to it in rallies and also on tweets. Does he benefit if the Eurozone breaks apart?
If you ask me, no. And what's so interesting is his vice president was traveling around the continent over the last day or two, making the case that the United States supports the European Union. We should be supporting it. The entire European project, I think, is one of the most creative, significant pieces of statecraft of the last century. But the president, look, he's a disruptor. I disagree with him fundamentally on that point. I think we ought to be much more of a preserver. But his default option is disruption. That's why he was so sympathetic to Brexit. It's why he sent certain signals that he's okay with Le Pen. I think it's wrong. And my guess is what you'll see probably going into the French election are continued mixed signals. We'll have some nods in the direction of the European establishment. But one way or another, the president will suggest that he would be okay with a Le Pen victory.